Hi. Well, just cut you short. Yesterday on self-worth and the self-being. I was trying to keep these segments down to 2 or 3 minutes, but it tends to go on as I'm trying to explain or make sure I'm getting that message across, like, so it's clear and understanding. And some of these points need to be hammered away at. But what I will do is put a script later on, so you can see that the key points of what each one of these is talking about. And what I was talking about yesterday was solid, flexible self. And why I use that terminology is it's about being able to take the hits and stand back up and know that you're okay. And sometimes when your partner says something, or in a relationship, well, I'm just going to use a relationship because it's really crucial here, because the same thing happens in business and with your children and any other stage of your life. But when you can take the emotional hits and don't overreact, and you don't need someone else to validate you. You've got the solid sense, and that's really attractive. And you think about someone who's in self-control, not being affected by others to the extent that they want to. Then you can see how that's acting. So it's kind of like, and I like to think, I'll just draw an analogy to a sports game, and really, tennis is a classic. So you can see when one player is playing well, he's getting on top of the other player. The other player's falling to bits and starting to hit the ball over all different directions, and that's become catastrophic, so to speak, in the way he's playing his game. So he's falling to pieces, and it's not very attractive. We all know with someone chucking their racket on the ground and packing the paddy. Well, that kind of happens in a relationship when you get overly emotionally involved in what's being presented and the outcome, as opposed to being solid about who you are and the value of yourself. So it keeps you attractive, and by understanding that with the tennis player, the player playing knows he's got the other one beaten, but doesn't find them attractive or competition as a player. He's just beating them. And that's kind of what happens in a relationship too, when one becomes overly controlling and over in the situation. They don't desire the other either. And this is the sad part about it. It makes the other even less attractive and compounds the problem, because the one who's being less attractive, who's like the poor tennis player, just even gets worse. So they lose their respect as well. And looking at the tennis scenario, the tennis player will double fault. They will start hitting balls where they usually hit them nicely all over the place. And this is kind of how the behaviours creep into a relationship, and the roles change. But there is good news for this, because as soon as you take hold, and if you turn around and said, "Stop, I'm going to take hold of this," and get back to an emotional state that you feel comfortable with yourself, and start self-validating and being self-dependent as such, you'll pull themselves in. So you see the great tennis players do this. Once they've played a poor shot, they'll be talking to themselves, calming themselves down, and bringing themselves back into line. And why I'm using a tennis player is because it's quite often you see this behaviour, because it's one person against another. And, well, I'm not saying you're against your partner in a relationship. I'm saying the same things happen when conflict or competition to a certain extent is extended. So a relationship, while we don't like to think of it as competition, we are in a competition for each other's affections and validation or commitment to the relationship. So we're trying to make sure everybody's looked after, and it's not the same as a tennis competition, but the behaviours can be very similar. So until next time, I hope we let you learn some more about this in the next section.